Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Inbound Now. I'm your host David Wells, and joining me here today is Mr. Rob Fugetta. Rob is the CEO of Zuberance, and he is the author of Brand Advocates, Turning Enthusiastic Customers into a Powerful Marketing Force. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Hey, thanks a lot, David. Can you hold that book up a little higher maybe next time?
Yeah, definitely.
There,
Product placement.
There you go. There, product placement. Love it.
Oh yeah. So Rob, I wanted to get you on the show because I read the book and I thought it was a fantastic read, and I wanted to kind of share your expertise with brand advocacy with our viewers. So I want to dive deep into the entire kind of scope of what is brand advocacy and what does it mean for businesses. Sound good?
Absolutely. Ready to do it.
All right, cool. So can you give us a little bit of background? What exactly is brand advocacy?
Well, I mean, it used to be called word of mouth marketing, and it's really about finding and engaging, your most passionate, most enthusiastic customers, and enabling them to tell your brand story or help sell your products without paying them. And we'll talk about that as we go along. But, I call this turning your best customers, your advocates, into a marketing force on an ongoing basis.
Gotcha. So is brand advocacy for every company out there, or is it really just for the big guys that have, tons of staff, tons of assets, tons of, marketing people to kind of handle this stuff, or can smaller businesses kind of leverage brand advocates as well?
Well, no, I mean, every company in the world, from a mom and pop shop up to GMC and Apple has brand advocates. And, you ask most small business people, like ask a caterer or an owner of a hair salon or a restaurant, where do they get their business from? And what they'll tell you is that it's almost all word of mouth. And although they may not know the term, what they're really saying is that the engine for their business, the lifeblood of their business, is people recommending them, happy customers, which we call brand advocates, recommending them, whether or business like is that every company has brand advocates. Now, as far as this approach, a systematic approach to brand advocacy, finding and encouraging those advocates to spread word of mouth, again, all companies can take advantage of that. And it's just a question of whether you do this with a platform like Zuberance's, or if you're a real tiny company, you can do a lot of this stuff just with a email and a spreadsheet. If you want to scale it and track it, you're going to need something a little bit more sophisticated, and I would say something that's purpose-built for advocacy, like Zuberance's. But yeah, I mean, advocacy, word of mouth, really, all business is a battle for word of mouth, and that applies to whether you're a caterer or whether you're GMC.
Gotcha. So you mentioned, it's about identifying the brand advocates out there, and in the book you say you can do this with a single question. What is that single question? How can you identify brand advocates?
Well, the question that you're referring to is called the ultimate for customer loyalty or brand loyalty, and that question was created by Fred Reichheld, who is the guru of customer loyalty, along with the customer experience management company Satmetrics. And here's the question. It asks, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our brand or product to your friends? And based on the response to that question, you can determine whether someone is an advocate, a passive, or a detractor.
Gotcha. So, and you cut out a little bit there, but you said Net Promoter Score, right?
Yeah, this question, the ultimate question for customer loyalty, comes from Net Promoter. And Net Promoter is a customer loyalty metric, and it's a way of measuring customer loyalty. And the centerpiece for Net Promoter is this ultimate question for customer loyalty: how likely are you to recommend? And what we found, and what our customers have found, is that it's a really simple and elegant way, an easy way to identify advocates. And put simply, advocates are people who respond on that scale of 0 to 10, 9 or 10 in response to that question. And, our customers are asking that question across multiple touch points and communications channels: digital, social, mobile, web, other, and posing that question across all of those channels to identify their advocates and track their Net Promoter Score.
Gotcha. So where is a good place to actually ask that question? Is it, before, I guess, what part of the process? Via email? Do you do it actually in person? Like they fill out a card? What's the best way to collect this data?
Well, we would recommend that you ask this question everywhere, at every customer touch point, every place that a customer interacts with your brand or product. One of the most effective ways of asking that question, David, is to ask that question via email. So nearly every company has some sort of opt-in email database, and posing that question via email to customers is a very quick and easy way. And oftentimes, depending on the size of your customer base, you can identify tens of thousands of advocates almost instantly. And as a matter of fact, and I put this in my book, Box.net, which is a file transfer and collaboration platform, in a matter of about 24 hours, identified 25,000 advocates. So they were able to build that advocate army quickly, essentially just by sending an email out to their customer base. But there are other ways as well, like, for example, doing posts every few days on Facebook or tweeting out every few days. How likely are you to recommend us? So leveraging all of those ways, but probably email is the easiest if you have an email database.
Gotcha. So when someone fills that out with an 8, 9, or 10, what are you doing with that? Those people now.
Mm-hmm.
Those advocates.
That's where the real value of advocacy begins to shine. Because as soon as someone answers 9 or 10, at least with the Zuberance system, we make it easy for that advocate to recommend the brand or product. And I'll give you one example. Once someone says 9 or 10, we can invite those advocates to rate and review a company's products or services. And so we have an application that the user experience for it is a lot like the user experience on Amazon, Yelp, or TripAdvisor. And when someone says 9 or 10, we say, hey, David, that's great. How'd you like to rate and review this product? And so the user then uses that application to create a review, and then they can share that with their friends or post it on third-party sites. It's very simple and straightforward, but it's a great way of leveraging and amplifying advocates.
Gotcha. So you're taking those advocates and, in effect, putting them into kind of a separate marketing campaign that's, I guess, enabling them and making it easier for them to actually become an advocate?
Oh, you bet. Yeah. And, well, a couple things. First of all, it's when we identify or when a brand identifies its advocates, we kind of think of that as a sustainable marketing department or force for the brand, right? So I mentioned reviews, but there are many other ways that brands can and are leveraging their advocates for content creation, not only reviews, but testimonials or stories, as we call them, for answering prospects' questions, for sharing offers, for helping launch products. So we don't really think about this as a campaign. It's more like an ongoing marketing program. And importantly here, when we say marketing program, it's not targeting advocates so much, right? Because, as marketers, we're always about targeting audiences.
Right.
This isn't really about targeting advocates. It's really leveraging advocates as a channel and going through advocates to reach audiences. So making, in effect, your advocates a part of your marketing department. And so reviews, stories, testimonials, offer sharing, all of that are ways to leverage your advocates.
Gotcha. Cool. So for the what about the people that don't fall into the advocacy scale? How would you move them up that ladder to get them to an 8, 9, or 10? In the book you list 5 proven ways to create a brand advocate. What are those ways? Can you elaborate?
Well, when we work with customers, we always tell them very authentically, we really can't create brand advocates for you. That's your job, and the way you create brand advocates is to provide really compelling and unique customer experience. In just about every category that Apple participates in, Apple creates an experience for their customers that customers love and are willing to recommend. So that's really the brand's job. We, as Zuberance, we can't do much with that. And by the way, the number one thing you can do to create brand advocates is, as I said, create a great product. Or as one of my heroes, mentors, Steve Jobs, said, create an insanely great product or an insanely great experience. That's the brand's job. But what we can do is that once you've created those advocates, and like I said, every brand has advocates, we can do something for you that you may not be doing today, and that is to systematically find those advocates and then give them the tools to tell their friends your story or help you sell more products. And I also want to mention, David, that we always get this question. So what happens to those people who don't say 9 or 10? In other words, who aren't advocates? What do you do with them? And through our platform, we can route those customers based on their response down different paths. So one quick example is if someone says 0 to 6, highly unlikely to recommend the brand or product, we can route them to customer service and support. If they 7 to 8, they're considered passives, and we may give them some content or an offer. So, we do have ways of kind of routing people based on their response to that ultimate question.
Gotcha. So when you do route those people that are, a detractor, if you will, to support or something like that, is that in an effort to actually move them up that ladder?
Well, it can be. I mean, that can be the result of that, right? So, for example, if someone went to your restaurant, they really liked the food, but they had a bad service experience, and they write about that, and therefore they rank you, say, 3 or 4, so they're considered a detractor. If we route them to service and support or customer support, then you can find out more about what happened. You can make it better for the customer, maybe offer them a free meal.
Right.
And then once they come back and they have a better experience, they can move from being a detractor maybe to a passive, and sometimes even to an advocate. Because, as you know, companies are filled with people. People are not perfect. People make mistakes. So, from time to time, you'll have an experience where, maybe the service wasn't very good or the interaction with the person wasn't very good. But when you make it better, when you correct it for a customer and you show them you care, it's really amazing how people can go from being a detractor to a passive or even an advocate when you make it better for them. So that can happen, and we can find not only advocates through our system, but we can find detractors and passives as well.
Gotcha. So with the one single question, the Net Promoter Score, do you find that it's a little bit skewed in the fact that usually someone that really loves a product or really hates an experience, they'll be the ones filling out a survey? Like, do you have a kind of a bias there with kind of the passives not even filling out the survey, or?
Yeah, it can be. And, I should point out that with what we do at Zuberance, we don't do a scientific Net Promoter research study, right? So we're doing more of like an Iowa straw poll, right. And we're putting on a on a brand's website, tell us about your experience. How likely are you to recommend us? Or we might put that question in an email. So that's different than a scientific Net Promoter study where you're going to interview a cross-section of your customers, and you're going to do it in a scientific, validated way in order to come up with a true measure of your NPS, your Net Promoter Score. So I think that there is some bias. Those people who are willing to even answer the question, would you recommend, or how likely are you to recommend us, may have some strong feelings either way. What we're really trying to do is, it just turns out that asking that question for the ultimate question for customer loyalty is just a simple and easy way to find advocates. And by the way, it's not the only way. So we have a listening platform that we can use. So, David, if you are on Twitter and you say Zuberance rocks, love Zuberance, then we can automatically find you and engage you and validate that you're an advocate. And so we do social listening as well. It just turns out that we found that asking this ultimate question and being able to quickly associate it with a unique email address, that's a really easy way to find advocates.
Gotcha. So that Twitter example, if you're searching Twitter for the sentiment of the tweet, right? When you identify that person that says Zuberance rocks, I'm going to tweet that later today. What would you do with that person on Twitter? Would you add them into a list, or put them into a potential campaign, or start talking with them on Twitter to try and activate them? What would be the process there?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you said Zuberance rocks, we probably have Kara deliver a case of beer to your house tonight. And thank you for the recommendation. But no, actually what we would do is we would probably engage you automatically and say, that's great, David. Thank you for saying that. How would you like to, write a story or a testimonial about, the marketing power of brand advocates? So we'd give you an opportunity in this example to create some content. Right. And then we could take that content and make it easy for you to share it. So we want to really engage you further, and we want to encourage you to become a more forceful advocate of Zuberance, if you will, a more effective advocate, by engaging you and then giving you the tools so you create even more content and then share that content with your friends.
Gotcha. So what company in your mind has one of the best brand advocacy programs?
Well, I'll give you a consumer and I'll give you a business example,
Sure.
B2B. On the consumer side, one of the top programs going today in the advocacy sphere is Rubio's Fresh Mexican Grill. And, they're popular here on the West Coast. They're fish tacos. They're fan tacos. And through the program that they have today, they've created an army of over 75,000 advocates. And those advocates have generated over 250,000 recommendations. And they're sharing those recommendations on Facebook, on Twitter, on Yelp, and elsewhere. And they're even sharing offers and coupons, and that's bringing people into Rubio's to buy more fish tacos and more great Mexican food. So I think that really have it right. Karen Silk, who's the VP of Marketing at Rubio's, she always knew that they had really enthusiastic customers. In fact, their mission at Rubio's is to create raving fans. So they're doing their job. They're providing a really great customer experience. But what Karen said to me was, "Hey, Rob, we've got this great experience. We know we've got a lot of love out there. We just haven't created that or amplified it." And now they're by their second year of their program, and they're getting fantastic results. So I consider them sort of best of class in the advocacy and the B2C arena.
Okay. What about the B2B space?
Yeah, now the B2B side, one of the customers or companies that I think is doing a bang-up job with advocacy is a company called Parallel Software. And Parallel sells desktop virtualization software, and they provide a software package that allows you to run Windows on Mac. And they're doing a great job with their advocate program. To date, they've created an advocate army of over 35,000 advocates. Those advocates have created 100,000 pieces of content, like story testimonials. They're sharing that content on places like Amazon.com, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And the VP of Marketing at Parallels, Kim Johnston, is a visionary marketer who really has embraced advocacy. One of the things that Kim said about her advocates, which I put in the book, which I thought was a really insightful comment, is that she said that she is learning as much from her advocates as they are getting from Parallels, right? So thinking about the relationship she's establishing with her advocates. And recently when they launched Parallels Desktop 8, they engaged their advocates early and got their feedback on what should go into the new product, and then involved them in a beta program. And then when the product came out, those advocates were primed and ready to talk about how great the new product was. So Kim's a great example of a marketer who really gets advocacy. She understands the power of consumer-generated content, and she's leveraging it in a very, very powerful and productive way to not just drive impressions and clicks, but to really build a movement around her brand. And the reason that I really love that story is because that's a B2B marketer, and that's in a category, desktop virtualization software, that even Kim herself would acknowledge it ain't very sexy.
Right.
It's utilitarian. But there you go, 36,000 advocates raving about Parallel Software. So I think that that's a good example on the B2B side as well.
Gotcha. So with that advocacy program, are they getting preferential treatment? They're getting like the new product first. They're getting maybe discounts, coupons. Are they paying, I guess with these discounts and what have you for advocacy, or I guess I lost my question in there. But basically, is it okay to pay for brand advocates? I mean,
yeah, we're all in favor of pimping out your advocates.
Okay.
We think buy them clothes, cars, expensive liquor. No, not at all. As a matter of fact, through Zuberance, we've generated over 30 million recommendations for brand, consumer and business brands and products, and no advocate has ever gotten paid for anything or gotten any incentive. So no swag, no coupons, no T-shirts, no mugs, no hats, nothing corny or sleazy like that. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one is that advocates don't require that. That's not part of their motivation or their behavioral type. What really rewards advocates, it's almost like a Zen thing. Advocacy is its own reward, right? So when you recommend something to a friend, whether it's a restaurant or a movie or a book, and your friends enjoy it, you feel good about that. You've recommended something and they've enjoyed it, and there it is. That's its own reward. Only 1% of advocates in a recent survey by Loyalty Wins said that recommendations are driven by things like incentives or rewards. That's the first. You don't have to pay or incentivize advocates. But here's the second point that's really important, and I really want marketers to listen to this idea here, as I call them, where they're saying to people, look, if you share a bunch of coupons with your friends and one of them buys it, or a couple of them, you're going to get something for that, like a free trip through the buffet line at Circus Circus or something like that. Listen, you don't need to do that, and it's lame. It's lame to say I'll give you $5 if you recommend me. It's lame and it's inauthentic. What you really need to do is find your authentic advocates and give them the opportunity to recommend you, and they'll do it. And so you don't have to pay people. And lastly, and I rant about this a little bit, as you can tell, because we are really opposed to paying people for recommendations or giving them incentives, right? It's like this. The last time you were a candidate, or it's almost like saying to your references, hey, listen, say something good about me, and if you do, I'll buy you a bottle of wine. I mean, that's sleazy, right? I mean, you would never do that. But you would facilitate that interaction between your references and the hiring manager. And by the way, if you got the job, you might then give them a bottle of wine, right? So it's just that you don't want to make it quid pro quo. You don't need $5 for a recommendation, or you don't want to say, if you recommend me, you get something special. And that's where we draw the line. We are 100% authentic, and we don't believe in paying advocates, and we found it's unnecessary to do that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, paying for reviews and it's just, you're going down a slippery slope into just unethical land, so. But
yeah, and the thing too is that actually, I put a study about this, David, in my book. That there was a study done that showed that as a consumer, if you find that a friend is getting paid or earning something, getting something personally for recommending, you're actually less likely to buy. You follow that? You're less likely to buy if you find out that your friend is getting something personally out of it. Because then it's like, dude, are you an affiliate for this company, or what's going on here? Why are you spamming me with all this stuff?
Right.
And so it doesn't work. It's not effective, and it's not sustainable. You can only spam people so many times before it's on. So, but if you find an authentic advocate, someone who really loves Lexus or BMW or Parallel Software or Rubio's or Samsung, and they truly recommend, they do it because they've had a great experience, that's what you really want to do versus, some sort of lame pay-for-referral scheme.
Gotcha. Cool. So, Rob, where can people find you online?
Well, a couple different places. Obviously, Zuberance.com. We also have a blog that Zuberance, and we were putting a lot of content on that that is kind of leading edge thinking, real world best practice. And I think we're pretty transparent ourselves in that blog about what works and what doesn't work. We've certainly learned what not to do, and we're willing to share that as well. So check out our blog. And then also, as far as the book itself, the book Brand Advocates, I think I happen to have a copy of it right here. Isn't that there you go. All right. That's the part in the Letterman interview where the book, pops up.
Yeah, I got to get a zoom in on the shot.
Product shot. There. Here's the thing about the book is that I think about the book as divided into two halves. And the first half is what I call inspiration. And really what my mission was to do in that first half is really inspire marketers about, who advocates are and how willing they are to recommend your brand or product without paying them. The second half of it is how to. And I think, David, as you probably, read through the book or even just kind of made a cursory glance, you can see that I really wanted to have this be very pragmatic and very practical. So I think hopefully if the book achieved its aim, it inspired people, but it also gave them a really clear roadmap on how to identify their advocates, how to energize them, and what and how to track. And so the second half of the book is all about that. And there's a website associated with the book. It's brandadvocatebook.com, brandadvocatebook.com. Okay. And lastly, Twitter at Rob Fugetta, and great way to carry on the conversation if you find this inspiring at all. Love to hear from you.
Gotcha. Cool. We'll put all those links in the show notes, and I appreciate you coming on the show. learned a ton about brand advocacy, and I believe our audience did as well.
Yeah, could I close with just giving you my favorite brand advocate story? Do we have a moment
Yeah,
for that?
sure. What's your favorite
Okay.
brand advocate story?
Okay, so my favorite advocate story comes from Rubio's, and I want to tell you about for the Rubio's brand, who goes by the screen name of Bella Ruby Mama, and sorry. Uh, so what Bella Ruby Mama wrote was that she first discovered Rubio's fantastic fish tacos when she was pregnant, and all she could eat and all she craved was Rubio's fantastic fish tacos. In fact, when she went into labor, she was eating a Rubio's fish taco. And then when her baby was born, she had a little girl. When the baby was born, guess what she named her? Ruby.
Wow.
So there you go. That's my favorite brand advocate story.
That is quite an advocate, I must say.
That's what we call an extreme brand advocate. And of course, not all advocates are naming their baby after their favorite brand. But I mean, I think it just, number one, the story, which is fantastic. There's no advertising copywriter that could create a story like that.
Yeah.
And if they did, you probably wouldn't believe it anyway. But the other thing it shows you is just the how passionate people can be about brands, and how willing they are to advocate and recommend the brand in all sorts of ways, not just stories, but reviews and offer sharing, etc. And I know we have some stuff on our website and our blog about Bella Ruby Mama, and that's my favorite